Welcome to Between Product and Partnerships, a podcast focused on bringing together product, partnership, and engineering leaders to discuss how to build, support, and scale SaaS ecosystems. This podcast is presented by Podium, an integration platform for building native integrations.
Hi, everyone. This is Christina Flashing here, and thanks for listening to our podcast, Between Product and Partnerships. If you're joining us for the first time, we talk about the challenges and what it takes to build integrations, partnerships, and SaaS platforms. And we talk to leaders working on these problems to hear about their experiences and trends. Today, we are so excited to have Kayleen Stanridge, who is a senior technical product manager at Stellar Cyber. Kayleen, it would be awesome to hear more about what you're doing today at Stellar Cyber and also your background. You have a great background in integrations, which is close to my heart, obviously. So I would love to learn a little bit more about you for the audience, and then we could dive in.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks, Christina. So yeah, Kayleen Stanridge here. I've been in the cybersecurity space for a couple of years now. My focus is mainly on how we can better protect customers through integrations and innovative solutions. And before working in product management, I actually worked for a couple other different companies. So ClickUp, Podium, and I worked on integration implementations and also in more of the professional services realm. So, and one of my biggest things that I love doing is just tackling complex problems that really help customers get more value out of their security investments, but also just building integrations as a whole. I've been working on that for a while.
Awesome. What, I guess, did you start in professional services, or how did you get into this space generally? And I ask as someone who's been doing integration work for a long time and got my start in like customer facing stuff.
Yeah. So I kind of had a similar start to yours. I actually started in more of a customer facing role on the technical support side. And then I slowly started taking on more, I guess, technical cases around integrations, like API based questions, et cetera. And then moved into more of an implementation / project manager role at Podium.
I feel like depending on the maturity of the company, like a lot of times the CX team ends up trying to hack together the integration stuff because they're the ones that are like, or the onboarding folks, they're the ones that are like the first line of defense. And a lot of times, core engineering teams, it's not like the sexiest project to work on. And I'd love to hear more about what integration means at your current job. Like some folks that are listening might not be as familiar with the vertical that you currently work in. So just curious, like, what are you integrating to? Like, what are some of the challenges that are specific to that?
Yeah, so I would say Stellar Cyber is really focused on being an open XDR, open extended detection and response platform. So the main goal is to just unify security data from across the environment, from a ton of different systems, so users can detect and respond to threats faster. So I guess what's unique about it is just our focus on integrations and automation. But I think one of the biggest challenges is just getting access to all of these different systems. So all of the customers that we have a different tech stack, and there's no one size fits all approach. So getting access, or working with customers to get access, or even working with partners to get access can be kind of tricky sometimes. So another issue at hand, so you probably are familiar with too, is just sometimes our vendors change their APIs and then you have an integration break or you have to try and keep up with some of the updates. But I think overall, that's probably one of the bigger challenges that we face.
Yeah, I'd love to dive in a little bit on the access piece. That is a thing that has been a through line in my career working on these types of projects, which is like, if you're connecting to like QuickBooks or something, easy peasy, they have a whole dev situation, like you sign up for your own sandbox, but it's, there's a lot of companies and great big companies that run on, in-house built stuff or legacy technology or technology that is like really locked down. And I've also been noodling a lot about like all the new AI stuff and like how to get access to a lot of these silos, but I'm curious how you guys handle that. And I know that you're working in product, like when you guys do have a new customer that comes and says like, hey, we're ready to sign up, but we've got this crazy situation in-house. Like, how do you guys deal with that? Do you have any best practices?
Yeah, those are some great questions. So at least on our side, we have a pretty streamlined process in place right now for requests that come in. So when the ticket comes in, it comes through as a feedback ticket. We get the items at hand from the customer and the exact ask. And then we do a round of API testing. So we actually have a dedicated engineer that helps us actually run the tests and get the sample data and the information that we require right away. So if any access changes or if there's any issues later on, we have that information from the start, which is super helpful, at least for development. But another key thing that we do is we actually work pretty closely with our customer success team. So if we need access to any of our customers' environments, like, we can work with them that way. But one thing is sometimes there's just no way to easily get access. So we've actually started working on simulating some of the data and information itself using some of the testing methodologies that we have.
Interesting. I mean, I'm familiar with, like, you just can't get in that as an idea. I guess, what kind of data are you talking about in terms of like what you guys are simulating? And this is a question from me. I'm really curious about it.
Yeah. So sometimes what we'll do is we'll create like tests based off of like sample postman collections, or we'll actually utilize the API documentation and say, hey, if you run this call, then your expected output should be like XYZ, for instance. And so just running it off of that to prevent further issues, or if we're running like QA tests and we don't have access, we can still validate what the actual output should be.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you guys find that you still run into like edge cases? I mean, the interesting thing about integration work to me is that there's a lot of dependencies and a lot of it is data related, right? And that data oftentimes is entered by a person in one of these systems, right? Sometimes it's generated by the system, but a lot of times it was entered in somehow by a person or a CSV or something like that. So there can be a lot of variability in what that data looks like. You know, should it have dashes or not have dashes? Like easy stuff like that. I'm wondering, if with that methodology you just described, if you feel like you guys are if you're still running into some of those issues, or if the data is like pretty consistent.
Yeah, we usually, for a lot of our API-based integrations, a lot of the times the data is pretty consistent. But if there are inconsistencies or differences in the logs that we get, we do have a way for users to send data using our log parsers. So they can basically forward logs over to our network sensor, and then we can utilize some specific like regex to parse out the logs or make changes as needed.
Sounds like you have your hands full with this stuff. It's like one big web of integrations. And I would imagine, and this is just me guessing, that given the kind of product that you guys are, you also have to go through security audits, and like there's all kinds of stuff related to that, like to get into some of these systems, right? Which I'm sure trickles down to you in some capacity sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like compliance is a huge thing, especially in our industry. So a lot of times we have to go through hoops, make sure we're meeting the customer's requirements, or storing credentials as expected, and like removing access to credentials when needed as well.
Yeah, I'm curious with your specific industry, because I believe like ClickUp and Podium are what I would call like more like B2B SaaS, like generic kind of B2B SaaS. And that's not a diss. It's just security is its own language and its own use cases. Like, what if there are unique challenges that came with working within that industry, or if you think that like the challenges are pretty similar across the industries that you've worked in?
Yeah, I would say a lot of the challenges related to security are probably a little bit unique in regards to the fact that a lot of our customers use on-premise solutions because they want to safeguard their data and they don't necessarily want it on a cloud-based solution, or they want to manage their own resourcing as well. So it's a little bit complex in that aspect, because sometimes you have to figure out, okay, well, if I want to like isolate an endpoint, or if I need to like run something on the firewall, I have to actually get in and get access to the customer's environment and make that change, or test the API in their environment, because there's not an easy way to get in, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, 100%. I bet you guys are like VPNing into Microsoft Server like 1998 or whatever it is. Like I have lived that life of like servers in closets in New Jersey somewhere, and like I feel like you're literally like sending a person to go like plug something into it physically almost. Yeah, I bet for you guys that's like a very complex landscape with a lot of that stuff. I have a lot of feelings about some of the legacy technology and how like it's going to take a really long time, in my opinion, for a lot of that to go away. Like the push to the cloud is great, but there are companies that have been using these databases for decades, and like they're not moving it on to Azure anytime soon, you know? Yeah, it must be. And it also must have been, or maybe not, but for me, it would be a very steep learning curve to get into a space that's as nuanced as security. Like I was looking at y'all's website prior to this call, and just like a lot of the language is terminology that I'm somewhat familiar with, but not like quite as deep as some other industries. I'm curious how you prepared for that. Or maybe it just came naturally to you, which would be amazing.
Yeah, I definitely don't think it came naturally to me at least at the beginning. So I would say you're spot on the terminology piece. There's a lot of security specific lingo, I would say. So that was definitely a big learning curve as far as picking that up went. But I think the biggest thing that helped me was our company has a couple certifications that you can do. So you can get like a security operations center analyst certification, or you can actually do like a stellar cyber certification as well. And that definitely helped just to make sure I was diving in and kind of it helps me get my feet wet a little bit more as far as the security lingo goes, because I definitely did not have very much security experience at all. They were looking for someone to work on integrations, but yeah, the security background was not a thing, or at least it was at the start. But yeah.
So many acronyms. And it's like in every industry, right? And we work at Pandium we're horizontal, so we're across industries. And it's so interesting to hear how people use the language differently, but to describe similar concepts, right? Like I'm sure there are unique challenges with what you're doing, especially relating to like the on-prem stuff and some of the security pieces of it. But, a problem with an on-prem solution like that challenge is the same anytime you're going to encounter an on-prem solution. So like your experience at those previous companies, I'm sure the patterns in my opinion, are really similar across industries often. But yeah, that language, those buzzwords and stuff can be really hard to pick up, I'm sure.
Yeah. I think it took me at least 6 months before I stopped Googling what each of the different terms meant.
Well, then it's also, if it's an acronym, you're going to get something from like a totally different industry. Like I was looking at something earlier and it had like something to do with the ozone layer or SaaS. I was like, cool. Yeah. So you've been in the integration space for a while across some like pretty notable companies in terms of ecosystem. Like ClickUp has an incredible ecosystem. I'm curious what you see as the future for integration work in technology. Like where are we headed? What is it going to take to get there?
Yeah, I definitely feel like integrations across the board are becoming a lot more democratized and like customer driven. So at least from my perspective, I see a future where integrations are more of a plug and play kind of configuration, or potentially even like integration platform driven. So like a Workato or like a Zapier, or like different integrations that non-technical audiences can help build or work at as well. But I also see things like potential standards like OCSF or like modern APIs making a change where customers are going to expect more out of the box integrations that can be tailored to their specific tech stack or use cases with minimal effort.
What do you think that looks like from an API perspective?
Yeah, I think it's going to be creating a methodology that requires as little technical knowledge as possible. But I think it's also going to be, I guess, buzzword AI driven a little bit more, where users can actually type in like, hey, like I need this specific use case tailored to this integration. And then the user doesn't even really need to have any like technical knowledge to have that change, which we're seeing that quite a bit too in the security industry with some of the like security orchestration systems as well. Like BlinkOps is a pretty cool company that's also doing some like AI based generation for playbooks or for integrations.
Oh, interesting. Can you tell me more about that? I'm not familiar with them.
Yeah, so they are kind of a platform that essentially allows you to build out a security workflow. Let's say if a threat comes in, how do you want to triage that? Or what do you want to happen next? What's the response to that action, or what response action needs to be taken? So that's probably something that I think is going to become more prevalent and is becoming more popular too as the need for more automation comes. But as AI needs more help with like AI response to it too, I think it's kind of an interesting route to take too.
Yeah, well, and the AI, I mean, this AI stuff is like such a huge topic, right? But one thing I was chatting with someone from my team about earlier today was the idea of like the governance and security implications of all of these agents and all of this AI that, if you're a company and you don't have things like really, really, really locked down, like it is now very easy for a human that is not an engineer and maybe is not 100% aware of what they're doing to be like plugging things into your production environments. And even if it's something just like, oh, it's just Gmail, like log in with Google, like there are security implications to like funneling all this data all over the place. It's interesting. I wonder if we're going to see like a rise in products that are related to permissioning, like specifically for that stuff. I don't know. I'm very anal about like what I hook up where, just from being in the space. And like, I read the thing and does it have read access? Does it have write access? Like what really am I giving you? And even then, it's still really easy to just click through, right? And be like, yeah, sure, whatever. So I'm sure like really hardcore security folks are having nightmares about some of this stuff. I've already seen like shadow AI, like, the idea of shadow IT, that there's all this stuff running at your company that you don't even know about. I don't know if you've seen anything like that within sort of the customers that you've worked with, but it's definitely something that I'm keeping an eye on.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting just the things that some of our customers want to monitor. Like we have like file integrity monitoring, like what changes are they making to files, or what are all the audit logs, what's Kayleen doing on a day-to-day basis, from like logging in to logging out to any kind of credential sharing, or like even downloading files, for instance. So it gets pretty intense as far as the way that data can get leaked out.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm probably overthinking it too. Like there's still worlds in which people are like emailing passwords around. So like, we've got a long way to go when it comes to fixing all the security things. But the fact that like these models, especially the LLMs, like the ones that you're using human language with, rely so heavily on external data sources. And like a lot of these data sources just makes me think like there's going to be a need for, to your point, even if it's just monitoring in some way. I don't know. There's definitely something out there around permissioning with some of this stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
So if we pivot a little bit more to what you're currently doing, again, with all the security stuff. So I know like cybersecurity is huge, right? Like there's a ton of technology that's encompassed in that. I'm curious how you guys think about talking about the value of your own product and the story that you tell externally around, hey, you should be paying attention to these things, or you should be using us instead of a competitor. How do you help formulate that story?
Yeah, I think a lot of that goes back to the open in the XDR. So Stellar Cyber was one of the first to kind of, I guess, be like a key player in the XDR space. And the open really means like you can integrate different kinds of systems or pull in data from different areas. And so our main thing is just keynoting like, hey, we already have existing integrations with like around 500 systems. So you should be able to quickly get those data into the platform. But in another note, we also try to showcase to our users, like, we're also building net new functionality. Like we're working on a new webhook ingestion configuration so users can build their own integrations in that way. But we also have like our log parser, so you can actually send and forward logs over, and our team will quickly get that data into the platform as well for our users and just make sure it's formatted and correctly routed to where the data should live as well.
Is most of the like prioritization around new systems and stuff, is that like customer driven for you, or is it more strategic around current product roadmap items? Because 500 integrations is obviously a ton. So curious how you think about prioritization or roadmap for some of this stuff.
Yeah, so for us, it's a little bit of both. So our teams will usually work on customer requests as they come in, but we also will think a little bit more strategically around how do we want to provide more value on the platform as a whole. So like an example would be like our ServiceNow bidirectional ticketing integration is something that we've worked on just as a platform-wide integration to provide better access for security teams to work with other teams that may not have access to Stellar Cyber itself.
Do you guys have partnership people too, like at your organization, like folks that do the commercial side of ServiceNow?
Yeah, we do have partnership people here at Stellar Cyber, and they'll work with different vendors that we're integrating with or new vendors that we're looking to integrate with just to find like a mutually beneficial configuration, or we'll do mutual launches and just like mutual marketing ploys as well, or plays as well.
Yeah, that go-to-market motion with some of these large companies like the ServiceNows of the world can be really helpful. Even though it's funny, like the build of some of those integrations can actually be like kind of lightweight. Sometimes it's not, but with some of these like kind of what I would call like cornerstone type of systems, they just have like a really good process for building into them. But there's like outsized value versus you might be working with like a small company that again has like some really crazy tech environment and it takes months and months to like get over the line. And you're like, I don't know. Juice is worth the squeeze here, but you sound like the type of person that like likes the hard problem, which makes it hard to like walk away from that stuff. Like I love it when people are like, nobody can do this. I'm like, if there's a way in that does not involve doing sketchy stuff, like we will find a way in. Like if I have to fly somewhere and look at that Raspberry Pi under your desk myself personally, like I will do it. Cool. Well, this has been a really great chat. I think we're coming up on time. I'm curious if you have any final thoughts, parting words for all of our aspiring integration PMs out there, or folks more likely that are potentially early in their career and are being thrown the integration stuff, because that's what often happens. Yeah. Any parting words?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think it kind of plays along to what you mentioned about diving into the hard problems. Like it's super important to just stay curious and focus in on the customer-centric items and think about like the harder problems at hand and how we can solve them. And from what I've seen so far, the best integrations that we have, they don't just solve a technical need. They really solve our customers' problems, and having that mutual collaboration with our customers and across teams has been really helpful too, because our integrations really touch everything from security to overall user experience. And I think long-term simplicity is really important too. So simplicity is your friend, I guess. So the easier it is for your customers to deploy and manage an integration, the more valuable it's going to be.
Sometimes there's that trade-off, like you make it simple for the customer, which makes it less simple for you. Exactly. But that's okay, right? Like that's your job. It's my job. Like we are the software company. Like it's our job to make it as easy for the user as possible while still maintaining quality, which that's actually challenging to me. Like I think it could be a lot easier to just offload that and be like, oh, the customer can figure it out. Like they can do all the configuration. I'm like, yeah, maybe they can, but maybe they want you to do it because it's your product and you're the expert. Well, it sounds like they're very lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks again for spending some time with us. I really appreciate it. I could talk about integrations all day long, definitely with someone like you. So maybe we'll catch up at a later time. For the audience, thanks so much for tuning in. If you want to find some more content, videos, blogs, etc., about integrations and partnerships, you can check out our website, pandium.com. And we hope to see you out there. Thanks, Kayleen.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed our content, subscribe to our channel and give us a thumbs up. For more content on tech partnerships, integrations, and APIs, check out our articles, ebooks, and other resources in the description or visit Pandium's website.